Great. So welcome everybody. Firstly, I'd just like to acknowledge that I'm calling today from the lands of the Dja Dja Wurrung people here in central Victoria. This land encompasses the Loddon and the Avoca rivers and the Pyrenees area across towards Avoca in the west and Bendigo in the north. So just like to pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging. Acknowledge that this was and always will be Indigenous land, and acknowledge that any Indigenous folk out there today that we're working with, that may be dialing in this evening or supporting out in the community. So welcome, my name is Josiah Park. I'm with the Red Cross Victoria Emergency Services team, and I work in stakeholder engagement and planning with Vic ES. So really great to see a strong contingent dialing in tonight. Just like to acknowledge also, we've got a real mix of people across the state. We've got many of our fantastic divisional leaders and community partnerships officers. We've also got some representatives from our national directors and Vic state leadership team, and some of my colleagues in the state office, including Shannon Mann, who you'll see on screen at the moment, who's going to help tonight with a bit of facilitation. Just a little bit of admin before we go much further. The chat function's down there for anybody who needs it. Just please note that we might not get to it all the way through the presentations tonight, but we'll certainly take note of the questions, and I'll be happy to hang around at the end of tonight's session for anybody who wants to discuss emergency planning. I'm always keen to, so yeah, if you want to hang around at the end, by all means, please do. So just to continue on, I'm just going to get Shannon to pop up a presentation there. Shannon, just sharing her screen now. Thanks, Shannon. I get a thumbs up maybe from Will Tran. Is that coming through for you? Yep. Thanks, Will. So the purpose of tonight's session is really just to take a look at the achievements and contributions we've made in Red Cross Vic ES this year in terms of emergency management planning, and take a bit of a look forward at 2021 and beyond as we look to strengthen our emergency management planning capacity and really be a strong contributor in that space across Victoria. Thanks, Shannon. I'll just go to the next. So we're just going to separate it into a few sections tonight. First, we'll take a look at our role in emergency management in Victoria. We're then going to hear from some representatives from EMV, who I'd like to welcome now, Laura Adams and Mike Freeman, who are online, and they're going to run us through some of the updates and key learnings from the Emergency Management Planning Reform Program, which has been in operation this year and last year. And then I'd like to finish up by reflecting on our journey in Vic ES this year in 2020, which has been, goes without saying, I guess, but a very challenging year for everybody. But it's still been a really important year in emergency management planning. And on that note, it's really pertinent to have this session today, which is the 1st of December, and it's the day that the Emergency Management Legislation Amendment Act, also known as the EMLA, comes into full effect. So today is the culmination of a lot of work by Emergency Management Victoria and the core agencies and other representatives across the state in emergency planning. So it's quite a nice day to have this session, I think, and to reflect on the achievements we've made this year and the progress we've made as an organisation. So that's how the session is going to run. Really conscious of time tonight. I'm aware that a number of our divisions across the state have got maybe having team meetings and other Zoom meetings following. So we'll look to wrap up probably a few minutes before 6 o'clock. Thanks, Shannon. Just to take a step back for a moment, when I talk about our emergency management planning, this is how it fits into our 9 core capabilities. So you'll see it there at the top, and it sits in before, during and after emergency, and planning and our obligations, which are legislative obligations, at local, so municipal, regional and state level. Thanks, Shannon. And tonight we're going to focus really on that municipal level. We've been very active in the state level and the regional level this year across many committees and in contributing to a lot of regional and state level plans. But tonight we're really going to focus on that municipal level. and the representation on what we refer to as MEMCs, so Municipal Emergency Management Planning Committees. So that's what we're going to focus on tonight. And I might take a moment now just bear with me. I'm just going to hand over to Lisa Keedle, who's our Victorian State Lead in Recovery, Preparedness, Strategy and Reform. Just to touch on, I guess, the importance of this work and where we sit in emergency planning in Victoria. As I said, we are a legislative member, which I think is something we should be very proud of. But we also need to understand and be aware of the responsibilities that come with that. So Lisa Keedle, I might hand over to you to speak for a few minutes on that.
Thanks, Joe. Hi, good evening, everybody. Thanks for just spending some time on today. What is, as Joe sort of said, the milestone for the EM planning reform for the Victorian emergency management sector. I've been asked to speak just for a couple of minutes very briefly about why this is important and what it is that Red Cross brings to this and why it's important. Red Cross is legislated and a key partner in the EM planning reform. I just want to acknowledge the fact that the Victorian Emergency Management Planning Reform is a really significant piece of work that's been rolled out across the state for the last couple of years, and as today is the last milestone for that reform to go to the local level, which is the Municipal Emergency Management Planning Committees, the MEMCs. And look, with this reform, obviously, as Joe said, the Red Cross is a legislated key partner in the agency for EM planning. And at all levels of emergency management planning, so at the state, the regional and the local level. And I think it's important to reflect on why I've been put into legislation and how is our contribution recognised because of that. I think if we go back to the 7 principles of Red Cross, they're absolute cornerstones as to the voice that we bring to these forums and into this legislative role. So if you think about the humanity, impartiality, neutrality, the independence, the voluntary service that we bring, the unity and the universality of what we do. And I think if we can, if you have a role at the regional, at the local level, that you hold those 7 principles as part of how you present and participate as a Red Cross member in those forums. I think our commitment to the reform is really reflected in our membership of 79 MEMCs and the 8 RIMCs, so the Municipal Emergency Management Planning Committees and the Regional Emergency Management Planning Committees. And the fact that we've got to that point where we have membership at all of those forums is a sign of our maturity in EM planning. I think it's something we've never had before, and somehow we've kind of, with the right focus, we've arrived there, and I'm really pleased to see that that's been an emerging success of this piece of reform for us. I really want to highlight the fact that the Red Cross voice at all levels of emergency management planning is appreciated and listened to, and that's because we bring a unique perspective. Our perspective is the psychosocial lens before, during and after. So through programs like Ready Plan, through RFR, Register, Find, Reunite, through psychological first aid, and through some of our recovery programs that we run, we actually really have a strong piece, and no other organisation at those EM planning reforms carries that lens. And I think that's a really important perspective to hold, that, again, as part of those discussions and those forums that you sit in, that you really bring that Red Cross voice to these areas. So I'm excited to see how we rise up into this opportunity and how we engage across all levels of emergency management planning. That's it from me, Joe, but just thank you to everybody for participating, and thank you all for committing and engaging to this. It's a really exciting space.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa, and yeah, beautifully summed up. And I think that last point there about us becoming a lot more mature in this space as an organisation is really important. I think we've come a really long way this year, but we can always do more. And ultimately that work helps vulnerable Victorians and Victorians when they're having the worst day of their life. So it's truly sort of very valuable work. And there's a lot of people online tonight who have contributed greatly this year. So thanks, Lisa. We might pass over now to Laura Adams, and thanks Laura and Mike from Emergency Management Victoria for coming along tonight. I understand that there's a presentation will pop up which Shannon is going to present, and Shannon, you might get that up when you get a moment. But Laura, yeah, over to you.
Thank you very much, Josiah. And I'm just as quickly going to hand the baton over to Mike.
Thanks, Laura, while the slides come up, and we appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with you tonight. I'm Mike. I'm also on Jar Jar Run Country, actually, Joe, over in Castlemaine. So it's a small world.
Just up the road, yeah, 5 minutes.
Just up the road.
Yeah.
So Laura and I represent a broader team within EMV on emergency management planning. And the purpose really of us coming along is to give you some context around some of the changes that have occurred, and all the changes are live today, and I'll speak more about that in a second. And an opportunity for you to ask questions. Really, it's to pick our brain and make sure you're as comfortable as you can be with what's being asked of Red Cross into the future. I'd also like to acknowledge we've got a Red Cross chair of one of the regional EM planning committees out at Gippsland, and that's Andrew Brick. And I think Andrew's online tonight as well. So it's good to have that representation.
Thanks, Mike.
But thanks for the opportunity. The intent of this legislation change is to better integrate, coordinate and make planning more comprehensive across the state. That's a fairly broad remit, and a hell of a lot of work's gone into this over the last 18 months. But today's really day zero. This is, you know, to Lisa's point, there's been a lot of milestones we've achieved, and we've done that, and we thank Red Cross for your assistance. But this is a reform piece. This is cultural change in how the sector plans and communities plan, and that's going to take a number of years. So I think getting in on the ground floor, as Red Cross have done, and engaging with this reform will set you up for success. And importantly, it'll help you bring those voices to the planning conversation. And this is new space. Traditionally, EM planning is done by people in uniform. It's come from a response background. We broadened the conversation to talk about recovery. And now we're really broadening it again, both in terms of looking at mitigation more comprehensively, but broadening the conversation and getting those voices that need to be heard in the room on an equal footing. And for me, that's really what planning reform is all about. So being here tonight is definitely in line with where I see this going. So thank you very much, and I acknowledge the good work Red Cross have done this year. I was up in the State Control Centre with Lisa during the fires, and doing everything from airlifting wildlife out of Malakuta through to delivering relief stores via Singaporean helicopters. So it's an incredible diversity of challenges we deal with in the sector. So I'll move on to the next slide. And they're boring, but it's important just to set some context. So as Joe mentioned, today's about the municipal level, but it's part of a broader context. And I'll just step through the big ticket items. At state level, you'll see a new state emergency management plan. Everything I refer to tonight is on our website, and Laura can provide the link to that. But the new state emergency management plan pulls together a whole lot of disparate bits of work. So now you just need to go into the SIM and find pretty much all you need for the state level planning architecture. In the back of that is a roles and responsibilities appendix, which contains Red Cross's mandated roles across mitigation, response, relief, recovery. And I'll talk more about mitigation in a second. So that's at state level. The other piece of key state guidance is the ministerial guidelines. And that's a great resource for people new to emergency management planning. So if you're a member of a MEMC or a REMC and this is new to you, then have a read of that document, the ministerial guidelines, and particularly the preface of that document gives you a good snapshot of why we're doing this. So that's at state level. They're all now live. Stepping down to regional level, most of the new stuff is here. So regional EM committees existed, but the legislation now really empowers them as planners with a defined membership. So we've been busy in the last 6 months getting those committees off the ground, and Andrew Brick can certainly attest to the challenges there. And yesterday we published the first regional emergency management plans. They're on the website as well. And that is really the next level up document that MEMC representatives need to read to get a sense of what the EM plan is for their region. Now, they're pretty immature. I reckon we've probably delivered a Datsun 180B when we probably want a Land Cruiser or something a little more powerful. But as I said, this is a reform piece. It's a long journey, and those regional EM plans will be reviewed. And they were put together by the REMCs in a very time-constrained environment. And as you read them, you may need to engage with the REMCs to bring more of those voices to the planning table for the next version, which will occur next year. So that's regional. Municipal level, that existed. We've tried to keep the changes to the minimum needed to meet the legislation. So we're trying to ensure that the MEMCs as they exist now largely can continue, just ensuring that their membership reflects the new legislation. So that's it as an overview. I'm happy to take some questions, and I'll just hand to Laura, and she'll just step you through some of the resources we've got to help you and help the municipal level through the planning journey.
Yeah, Mike. Shannon, if you don't mind flicking slowly to the next slide, and I'll just pause if there are any questions coming through. And a good observation by Susan in the chat, Mike, that we need to have a workable car before you can upgrade. So I'll stick with that. Maybe that can be our motto for the next month or so.
That's right. Tabsolato is not going to solve that for us.
I seem to be getting a bit of a hammering here, Laura. So we went all right in our plan.
We did what we could, didn't we, Andrew? Under your good leadership there. So that I guess 3 steps of, well, those 3 levels of planning, as we've talked about tonight, it's just really good to know that context and to understand that wider statewide planning framework that the municipal level sits within, because that really will help, I guess, make those more strategic decisions as you're looking at things from the MEMC point of view. You can understand that you have access to the REMCs, and really it's a great level of influence that you have on a MEMC because of this new framework. So what you can see on your screen here is just a very small snapshot of a document that we've developed called the Transition Guide for Reforming Municipal Emergency Management Planning Arrangements. And yes, I did take a breath before I said that. This document is primarily for the use of the incoming MEMC chairs, and they are, under the legislation, they all belong to the municipal councils or the Alpine Resort Management Boards. There are 4 of those across the state, and they are, for the purposes of the Emergency Management Act, they are considered municipalities as well. So that brings us to 83 MEMCs that we have across the state. So this transition guide we have provided to all of the MEMC chairs, and we've stepped them through it in some Q&A sessions that we had last week. The guide itself goes into quite a lot of detail about what is required to move from the current state, or I guess I should say previous state, because the current state as of today is the reformed state. And as Mike mentioned, we have looked at focusing on the minimum possible change to get to that reformed, to get to those reformed requirements. We do know that 2020 has been a bit of a year, and I've heard Mike mention a few times in different forums that if we were to implement a reform program, this year probably wasn't the year that we'd choose. But we're very thankful to everyone that's come on board to make it happen, because it definitely has been a collaborative effort. So the reason I'm showing you this transition guide here, and I am very quickly going to give you a bit of a précis of the content in it. The reason I'm showing you is because it is accessible to you. It is on the Emergency Management Planning Resource Library, and you'll find that on the EMV website as well. As Mike said, everything that we talk about today, you'll be able to find in a related resource on the EMV website in some place, shape or form. You can go and have a read of this document in all of its glory and kind of go down to the more nitty gritty details. But we'll just do a very quick overview of the content of it today, just in case it raises any questions, or if there are any topics that you would like to go and explore in a little bit more detail further down the line. So if you wouldn't mind flicking through to the next slide. So the transition guide itself is split into 4 different sections. And so the first section is all about the resources available to you. You've already heard me and Mike talk about the planning resource library. And the longer you hang around us, the more you'll find that this is one of our favourite topics. It is increasingly something. I never thought I'd have a career in sales while I worked in the government, but if I did, I'd be trying to sell you the resource library. If you ever have any questions about anything to do with planning reform, my suggestion is to go to the resource library in the first instance. And I'm happy to put a small amount of money that most cases you'll find the answer you're looking for there if you have a hunt around there. The next point is just about the Emergency Management Manual Victoria, or affectionately known as the EMV. For those who have been around the space a little bit over the years, you'll be acquainted with the EMV. And unfortunately, if you had a good relationship with it, then I'm sorry to say that the EMV as of today is no longer, but all of the useful resources in it are also available on the resource library. Again, they've been rebadged in a different way, or in half the case, half of the EMV is now presented in the State Emergency Management Plan, which you'll find on the website as well. Failing finding your answer on the resource library, you will be able to go speak with your friendly neighbourhood REMC chair, which Andrew Brick is a great example. You can be the figurehead today, Andrew. So each of the 8 regions are working relatively closely with us as the planning reform team at EMV. So if they don't know the answer off the top of their head, then they know somebody who does, which is either Mike or myself, or one of our wider team that we can go find the answers for. And the 4th point there is just about a planning reform newsletter that we've been producing. It has been going out about fortnightly. It's nothing to set your watch by at the moment, but it is approximately fortnightly. We see that frequency changing going into next year just because of the transitions that we're making in the reform process. But if you do want to keep updated with what's happening in the planning reform space at all 3 tiers, then that's a great way to keep in touch with us. You can find a link to put your name on that database on the resource library. I wasn't lying, this is my favourite topic. And also by virtue of being on a MEMC committee, if we are aware of your membership on a MEMC committee, we'll automatically just put you on there as well. So hopefully you don't consider that spam. But I'll very quickly just go to the next slide. So this is kind of, we're talking about the committee itself now. And when it comes to establishing the reformed MEMC, that's really more something that is for the attention of the municipal council. They just have to go through a certain process to get that up and running in accordance with the legislation. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. But the membership of the reformed MEMC, I guess, is where you step in. And it was great to hear you mention, Lisa, kind of the wording that you're using about the opportunities that you have as members on the MEMC. It is like you have recognised it is a resource intense opportunity if you start looking at things across the quantum of MEMCs we have available to us. But it really is an opportunity for your agency, and Mike will go into more detail about that once I've wrapped up my little section here. In the transition guide, you'll also find some wording about a substructure or possible substructure ideas. For example, I was just having a chat with Andrew Brick. At the regional and the municipal levels, the existing fire management planning committees are going to become nested underneath the REMC or the MEMC, depending on the level there. So what you'll see is that the REMC at the regional level and the MEMC at the municipal level, they really are the peak planning bodies for their forgotten the word, for this, starts with an R, respective, there we go, for their respective planning footprints. And then for those of you who are involved in one of the MEPCs that also participates in integrated planning, you might hear a few MEPCs talking about MEPCs, integrated MEPCs. There are, I guess, some peculiarities about how that will look like in practice. So if you are a part of one of those committees and you want a bit more detail about that, you'll find a separate fact sheet on the Planning Resource Library. I should be taking notes as to how many times I mention that. That just goes into a bit more detail as to what that looks like in practice. Obviously, well, and hopefully it is obvious, any questions that you do have beyond today, if we don't get to them today, please do touch base with us after today. We're more than happy to go into some more detail. There are some great questions in there, and it's the planning reform covers such a wide scope of topics that we can't possibly cover it all in one good hour today. The final section, Shannon, if you wouldn't mind flicking over, is about the Municipal Emergency Management Plan itself. So the MEMPs have existed for a long time. They have been specifically council documents. And one of the changes under this reform is that it shifts from being a council document to being a document owned by the multi-agency MEMC, which means that Red Cross has a stake of ownership in all of the MEMCs across the state. Excuse me, which that again, to use that rhetoric of opportunity, I hope you can kind of see how you can start using this to your advantage as well. But no doubt you'd be adding value to the MEMP itself. Delivering the MEMP is one of the key outputs, one of the key products of the MEMC itself, but it's worth noting that the committee itself is more than just a MEMP development committee. The planning process that you'll go about to get the MEMP together, that's really where you'll find all of the value, or most of the value, I should say, in the work that you're doing. And it's worth mentioning, excuse me, it'll be worth mentioning for those of you on the MEMCs that your plan will be going through a new assurance and approval process. I won't go into too much detail. In fact, I won't go into any detail about that tonight, except it's worth you knowing that this is a new process. And of all the topics that are most new at the municipal level, this is probably one of the biggest ones. And so we'll be working closely at the regional level and at the municipal level to do some hand holding as we go through this new process, because that comes live today. So we've got guidance material and all the like. If you do fancy some good bedtime reading, it's not uploaded yet, but by the end of this week, there will be some guidance material on, surprise, surprise, the Planning Resource Library. And finally, just a comment about MEMP subplans as well. So any subplans, they are treated in the same way as the principal plan itself. And I think that's probably as much as I need to go into detail there. So that really gives you, I guess, quite a high level overview of the key changes that are happening at the municipal level and what is required of the committee. As I said, if you go into the resource library and look at that transition guide, it goes into detail of more detail about each of those topics I've just covered. These are just the headings of that transition guide, and you'll find other fact sheets and other collateral up there as well. So I'll hand back to Mike, and feel free to put any questions in the chat or to raise your hand virtually or however Zoom works if you'd like me to clarify anything in some more detail.
Thanks, Laura. And Shannon, we can probably kill the slides and just jump back into the sort of more human view. My head there. Look, we'll stop talking very shortly and then throw over to questions. I just want to quickly emphasise a couple of points. Under planning arrangements, Red Cross has an equal voice to CFA, to FRV, to EMV, to SES, to all the other players. And as I said, that's important. And we've recently met with all the municipalities sort of over the last week and talked them through this reform. And you know, one of the common themes was the challenges they have in particularly the relief space and early recovery. And I know that's something that Red Cross can add value to. So there's definitely scope for Red Cross to use your new voice in the planning. My last point is just looking into the future. as I said, today is day zero of the cultural change that we need to go through. It sounds a little bit Maoist or something. I don't know whether I like day zero. Anyway, I'll probably refine that. But some of the challenges we've got immediately into the next 6 to 12 months is doing another version of the REMPS, so the regional plan, and really trying to tease out what are the actions and tasks at regional level and what's the value add and how do regions best advocate for municipalities. Part of that is bringing in a new risk methodology. What does that mean for Red Cross? It would be good to be able to articulate your desires and actions for the community as far as what the consequences on communities are going to be if those actions don't get up or don't become part of the plan. So very much using that community consequence language to justify your arguments as to what should be in a plan. The whole intent of planning reform is that community focus. As I said, REMCs, the regions are now advocates of the municipalities. That relationship's going to take time to develop. So if you're on a municipal committee, having that continuous conversation with your regional Red Cross rep is important to build that relationship. And lastly, the plans at municipal level are going to be more multi-agency plans. They're not owned by council. They're now multi-agency plans, and Red Cross can put into that plan whatever the committee would like to take from Red Cross. That's me. That's us done. Happy to take questions, Shannon or Joe.
Yeah, Mike and Laura, thank you very much. That's really informative and I think really valuable, just touching on those key points that have generated out of that planning reform program this year. I'm just conscious of time, so what I might ask is, I've seen already that Laura has been answering some questions in the chat, so we might go down that path for the remainder of the session. If people have got questions for Mike or Laura, perhaps pop them in there. And then also, as I said, at the end of this, I'm sure that we might be able to steal a few more minutes from Mike and Laura to answer any more that come up. But I might ask Shannon now you to just pop up a couple more slides from my presentation, if you wouldn't mind, Shannon.
One sec.
Right. No problem. I need a drink of water anyway.
Cool.
Nice work, Shannon. The pressure was on there for a moment. We might just flick through. There's just a couple of slides I'd like to put up just to recognise how far we've come this year. So that's the first one. And you'll notice at the bottom there, 79 MEMCs. Now, that is incorrect, and that's my error. And it certainly is 83 MEMCs, as Laura spoke of. We have all MEMCs as part of the Alpine Resort Management Boards. But largely, I think the message will come across here. So a lot happened this year, a lot more that's on than is on this slide, but I wanted to just touch on a few key moments for Red Cross and emergency management planning this year. So the year that was 2020, and let's hope it 2021 is improved, but we obviously started in the midst of the summer bushfires in the northeast and in East Gippsland, and then that moving into a recovery space in January, February and March. So a lot of fatigue across emergency management organisations, and a lot of people had already done so much before the year has really got underway. During that time, though, we were still very active in this planning reform space, so we contributed feedback to Emergency Management Victoria at multiple occasions on some of the draft documents, including the draft guidelines for preparing REMPs and NIMPs. This was, just like to acknowledge here, that was work done by a lot of people across the organisation, and we really drew upon our collective knowledge from our divisional leaders representing on MEMCs to review those documents and contribute our feedback to EMB. We then moved into March and COVID-19, the pandemic really taking hold, and that had a massive impact on the way emergency management planning can operate. And really, we had to, like all organisations, transition to working virtually very fast. And that was challenging, but I was really thoroughly impressed by everybody on those committees and how quickly we transitioned as an organisation and still remained effective and provided really good contribution. in what was already a really challenging year. So that started in March and obviously is still ongoing to this day and will be for some time. Into September, the SEMP was released, which Laura spoke about, the State Emergency Management Plan. That really set a lot of the foundation here. So it led to the interim REMCs being established, and Andrew Brick, who's online, is a REMC chair for Gippsland. And we in the Red Cross Emergency Services have 7 other representatives. So we're active on all 8 regions, and I'd like to recognise those people because they put in a lot of work as those REMCs were established. And contributed to drafting those regional plans, which, as Laura spoke about, have now been approved by the Emergency Management Commissioner and are available. During this time also, September through till November, we worked really hard in the Vic ES team, and a lot of people contributed to this in some targeted recruitment. So we were aware that we had great people doing a lot of great work across the state, but we also had some room to improve and to get more people in place and strengthen our capacity. So that led to a targeted spring recruitment, and we recruited a number of divisional leaders and community partnerships officers who are now in place and getting familiar with the organisation and their role on those municipal planning committees. And that's really been an absolute strength for our organisation now. We've really improved that capacity. It means going into 2021 that we have people in every spot, every municipality, every region across the state sitting on those committees and representing Red Cross in a really good way. Just into November and now the start of December, obviously the EMLA has now come into full effect from today, which has been a key date on our horizon all year, and really it's a culmination of a lot of work by Red Cross, but also by obviously Emergency Management Victoria and the core agencies. Just at the bottom here, I've put a line. So as I said, it should be 83 MEMCs, but we won't worry too much about that. But Red Cross now sit across largely the 83 MEMCs in Victoria, 8 REMCs, and countless number of subcommittees, working groups, pandemic planning meetings, and a whole vast array of other committees. And I did some rough calculations on this today, and it's, I mean, 1,000 is just so conservative. It's thousands of hours that Red Cross emergency service personnel are contributing in the planning space every year. So it's not just those quarterly meetings. It's not just the sitting on those committees. There's so much work in between, and it's just really, I think, important to recognise that, because sometimes planning can get left in the background a bit, and planning can sometimes be a bit dry, but it's really amazing, effective work that our personnel are doing at the moment, and I just wanted to highlight that. I might just jump across, Shannon, to the next one. So just quickly here, basically what we're looking at here is what our representation was in January of this year across the MEMCs. So across those municipal emergency management planning committees. So at the start of this year, we were representing on approximately 65% of those 83. So this is, you know, I don't mean to highlight this because it was anybody's fault. It was just a fact. And that 65%, we're doing a fantastic job. We're representing on a lot of great committees and doing some really great work, but we had room to improve. I'll just take a look to the next slide now, Shannon. So this is where we sit today. We sit at 95%. So effectively what we're saying there is we have Red Cross people active on 95% of those 83 MEMCs in place, forming relationships with their committee, contributing to the development of those plans under the new legislation, and fundamentally ensuring that Red Cross information, programs, updates about how we're supporting people in COVID, how we're supporting people in other emergencies, is getting through to the other core agencies, and we're collaborating really well to make sure vulnerable Victorians are really well supported. So on track, we have a little bit of work to go still, and it will always continue. There's always ways we can strengthen our capacity more. But I think it's really important to highlight how far we've come this year. And that's really largely due to a lot of people online tonight and a number of others. And there are divisional leaders. So if you take a look in that participants section and you scroll across and see some of the faces and names. You'll see Dennis Hilda in Darwin Southwest. You'll see Alan Benson in Metro, Southern Metro. You'll see JJ Edmondson down in Gippsland. I don't want to single anybody out, but there are a lot of people who've done a lot of work this year and are really committed going forward. So we're in a really good position as an organisation, and I'm really looking forward to working more on this in 2021, as I'm sure all of you will be. And on that note, I might now hand to, and I'm just conscious of time, so JJ Edmondson is Divisional Leader. We might pop the next slide up, Shannon. Divisional Leader, Operations Officer in South Gippsland, and Alan Benson, who's a Deputy Divisional Operations Officer in South East Metro. So I thought it really important tonight to put a human side to this and to hear from several of our people, of Red Cross people, who have been active in this space this year. So JJ, we might start with you just for a couple of minutes and then over to Alan, just to talk about your experiences this year, your challenges and the successes working in emergency planning.
Sure, thank you so much. And wow, I like that photo much better than what I look like now. Thank you for letting me have an old photo up there. Yeah, this year has been very much a baptism by fire. We started off, of course, with the bushfires. We were activated from the very beginning, and we still had people out, members out doing the recovery work when COVID started. And so we literally had somebody going from recovery straight to food delivery. And that was basically set the tone for the rest of the year. We have not stopped at all in the last 12 months. We've been very busy and involved in the COVID as well in terms of recovery and continuing that. In terms of MEMSI, we've gone from having our 4 quarterly full meetings to now having, we then went to meetings every single week. Both the MEMSIs decided to do a subcommittee to discuss COVID, and that planning was everybody on the MEMSI meeting and committee plus additional. So we've been continuing those for many weeks. We had weekly meetings. Gradually, as things started to get under control, we went to bi-weekly, and I'm on 2 MEMSI meetings, 2 MEMSI committees. I'm on both Bass Coast and South Gippsland. We then went just recently, we've gone to monthly meetings. So I tried to count, and I think it was over like 30 or 40 meetings just between those, as well as Bass Coast. We also do a food providers meeting through MEMSI. So all the service providers who support the communities, we get together for an additional meeting. It's been really good being involved in MEMSI. We're certainly a very active and vocal part of the committee. People certainly mention Red Cross a lot, which has been great. And I've been able to promote a number of things that we do. Through discussing our preparedness, we got invited to do a preparedness talk to the service providers of Bass Coast. We've now done a couple of those. That's then been promoted to other community groups, and we're now doing quite a few preparedness presentations with the council now supporting and advertising those for us quite widely. So it's been really good with that support as well. I am just really grateful that we only have 2 Shire councils. For other divisions such as South East Metro with 3, or for Dennis Hilda's where he's got 4 committees to work with, that would be a huge impact. I mean, we're already doing a lot of ours. I'm just very fortunate to have a Deputy Divisional Operation Officer in Adele Prescott who can also attend them. And the council's been very open to that, which has been brilliant, being volunteers. And if I suddenly get called off to work, she can easily step in, and they know her well. So it's been challenging in terms of the time commitment, particularly being workers, but it's been very rewarding, and we've certainly made very strong partnerships now. So yeah, it's been good.
Thanks, JJ. Alan Benson, I think we might go to you now to hear about you. Alan's in South East Metro, Melbourne.
Thanks, Josh. Yes, South East Metro, around about Dandenong, Pakenham, Casey area, for those who are not certain where South East is. Certainly been a challenging time. We've had before, well, up until the beginning of this year, quite regular meetings and the occasional subcommittee meeting. But after the fires and COVID, the activities increased significantly, and then additional work with the preparations necessary for the implementation of today's activity, the 1st of December. The biggest change for us, of course, was with COVID and the fact that we had to meet electronically. It has some advantages in that it's perhaps saving time in travel and so on, more efficient in that sense, but it had some technical issues, not the least of which was quite a number of agencies not having the same spreadsheet requirements as other agencies, and important documents such as the SERA documents and background material and data was not able to be transmitted evenly between everybody by the usual method, but that was solved with a matter of the Secretary of the MEMSI putting everything out by email, so we got over that one. The subcommittee meetings, I think a good number of them would not have been successful under the old method of people travelling to a central place and meeting face to face. Certainly the technology of Zoom and Teams and so on has allowed a lot more work to be done effectively and cooperatively in that sense. And I feel that the MEMSI out here is quite well placed to make the transition due to the leadership of some of the agencies and the background work of the council clerical staff to make certain all the meetings and so on ran very well. Attendance has been remarkably high, I think higher than the normal face-to-face meeting too, and that's another good point given the technology that we have. I think they're the main points, Josh, and I'll keep it short for the sake of brevity.
No, thanks, Alan and JJ. And look, as I said, really, I think important to see, put a face to some of the work that we do, and there's a lot of other people online that have been doing similar work to JJ and Alan, so thanks to all those as well. Shannon, we might pop to the next slide just to run through a couple of points before we finish up, and then we might jump to some of the questions. I see Mike and Laura and Andrew, Brick, and a few others have been active on that chat, so thanks for that. A few reminders, again, thank you. It's steady work that goes on in the background that a lot of Red Cross Vic ES people do and put a lot of time in, and I think it's now probably a good opportunity to take a bit of a breath into Christmas and obviously step back a bit from this work before we really ramp up at the beginning of next year and really continue to strengthen our EM planning capacity as an organisation. If anybody wants to get in touch with Red Cross Vic ES, the best way there is via that 1-800 number that's always accessible, and an email address there, which is stakeholders_vic_es, redcross.org.au. It might be that you're already working in this planning work with Red Cross. It might be that you're a Red Cross team member who's looking to get involved or learn more, or in fact, you might know somebody, an individual or a community group outside of Red Cross that wants to get in touch. So that's the best way to go about it. Also, just like to say too, your divisional leaders, so your deputy and your divisional operations officers are always a really good support. They have a lot of collective knowledge, so I'd encourage you to reach out to those people as well in your part of the state. And finally, yeah, another plug for the resource library, Laura. I have found it very useful this year, and I continue to tell people about it if they don't know about it, and to give it a plug because it's very well set up. It's getting a lot of good updates here at the moment, and if you have a question or you're seeking a bit of clarification on something, it's most likely there. If you need some support with in fact finding it or navigating to it, please reach out to myself or via those contact details above. Or in fact, I'm sure EMB will be able to help us out if there's something we can't find up there. That's really all from me. Again, conscious of time, but we do have a few minutes left, so I might hand over maybe perhaps back to Laura if you've got any final comments, or Mike, and then if there's anything on that chat that we haven't got to, we could work through some of that now, and then I'll be more than happy to stay on after 6 o'clock if anybody wants to have a further discussion.
Thank you very much, Josiah. I might say a few words and then hand over to you, Mike, if that works with you.
I have nothing else to say.
So I do think we have got to every question on the chat. So please do let me know if that's not the case. If we haven't answered your question fully or at all, please let me know. I am also hitting enter now on the link that if you would like to sign up for the planning resource live planning, what am I talking about? The planning reform newsletter. Click on that link and just type your details in and that will automatically add you into the newsletter there. But I just wanted to say thank you very much for your time this evening. Thank you very much for inviting us to be here. This is as useful for us as what I hope it has been for you. And just as a resident of Victoria, thank you very much for the work that you do for all of our communities. You really do make a difference. And I know when you're kind of down on the ground, you might not see the impact that you're making, but with everyone doing their little bit, it really does make a difference. So thank you very much for that. I'll hand over to Mike.
I echo everything you've said. I have children fighting in the background, so I will end it there.
Thanks, Mike and Laura, again for coming along, and thanks to everybody for dialing in tonight. The session's been recorded, and I'll take out some of the key messages from the chat there tonight and some of those links, and that'll be sent around to divisional leaders shortly, so you won't miss any of that. Yeah, thanks again. If anybody wants to hang on and have a chat, more than happy to. But if you want to run for dinner, or I know some might be running for cricket training. I think Ricky's cricket training in Gippsland was washed out. But you won't say no to the rain, I'm sure. So thanks again, everyone, and yeah, have a good night and safe and happy Christmas.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Lisa. Cheers.
Thanks, Joe. Well done.